Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, a deadly blast at an East Los Angeles Sheriff's training facility. The explosion claimed the lives of 3 deputies. A multi-agency investigation is underway. Christina Corona reports. It's official. President Trump formally suing Rupert Murdoch in the Wall Street Journal for libel. Iris Tao tells us how the president is responding to the alleged letter to Jeffrey Epstein and what the Justice Department is doing today to release more files. A busy week on Capitol Hill for House lawmakers, approving a $9 billion rescissions package early this morning. They'll now head to the president's desk. Luis Eduardo Martinez has the latest. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth meets with Israel's defense minister at the Pentagon. Meanwhile, the House Judiciary Committee accuses the Biden administration of funding protests in Israel. Jason Perry has the details. The European Union is imposing further sanctions on Moscow. Russia responds by threatening to increase its attacks on Ukraine.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. We're following breaking news from Southern California, where a deadly explosion at a sheriff's training facility claimed the lives of 3 deputies. Christina Corona has the latest from East Los Angeles.
We're down the street from the LASD training facility where 3 sheriff deputies are dead and another person is hospitalized after an apparent explosion that occurred around 7:30 this morning. Now, this facility houses the department's special enforcement and arson units.
Tragically, they were 3 sworn members who were fatally killed that were assigned to our arson explosives detail.
An undetonated ordnance exploded at the Biscayne Regional Training Center located at 1060 Northeastern Avenue.
Currently, our homicide detectives are on scene, and they are investigating the deaths that are being assisted by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, who are investigating the post-blast portion of this incident.
Sheriff Luna also thanked the LAPD bomb squad and Chief Jim McDonnell, saying they responded immediately after the explosion to render the devices safe.
At this time, we do not know the cause of the explosion. However, the specific area has been closed off due to the ongoing investigation.
The sheriff added the identities of the deputies have not been released, but their deaths mark the deadliest day for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department since 1857.
Between all 3 sworn members, they had served our community proudly for 74 years, and that's amongst all 3 of them collectively. 19 years, 22 years, and 33 years.
U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi said on X that she spoke with Sheriff Luna and U.S. Attorney Bill Asaley, confirming the FBI and ATF are helping with the investigation. Mayor Karen Bass also took to X, saying the thoughts of all Angelenos are with all of those impacted by this blast. Authorities state that there's no immediate threat to the public. This remains a developing story, and the investigation is ongoing. Reporting from the city of Monterey Park, Christina Corona, NTD News.
President Trump today following through on his threat to sue media mogul Rupert Murdoch. This after Murdoch's Wall Street Journal published a story about a letter Trump allegedly sent to Jeffrey Epstein, which Trump calls fake. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Good evening, Iris. What is the latest in the president's legal actions?
Good evening to you as well, Tiff. According to court records, President Trump on Friday has officially filed a libel lawsuit against Rupert Murdoch, the publisher of the Wall Street Journal, as well as Dow Jones, as well as the 2 Wall Street Journal reporters who wrote a story on Thursday that got published that night, alleging that President Trump, back in 2003, has sent Jeffrey Epstein what they called a, quote, bawdy letter. Trump has strongly denied this report, calling it fake, and also adding in his Thursday post that, quote, I never wrote a picture in my life. It's not my language. It's not my words. He also says that he told Murdoch that it was a scam and should not be published, and if it does get published, he will sue. And now President Trump is following through on his words to sue, as well as following through on his promise before to make public more Epstein files. On Friday, the Justice Department has asked a judge officially to release the grand jury testimony from the prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein. And while it's unclear how long that process will exactly take for more files to become public, the White House this week is emphasizing the administration's approach to transparency compared with the last administration's. Watch.
The Democrats had control of this building, the White House, for 4 years, and they didn't do a dang thing when it came to transparency in regards to Jeffrey Epstein and his heinous crimes. It was this president who directed the Department of Justice and the Attorney General to do an exhaustive review of all files related to Jeffrey Epstein, which they did. The president has been transparent. He has followed through on his promises to the American people.
And now on this letter story, the White House is emphasizing that a Wall Street Journal has not published and actually admits that it does not even have the actual letter that they based their entire story on. And even Elon Musk, who reignited this whole controversy last month, is now arguing that, quote, the letter sounds bogus. Back to you.
Definitely worth watching. And Iris, the president today also signed into law major legislation regulating the crypto industry, actually the first of its kind. Tell us more about that.
Sure. So earlier this afternoon at a signing ceremony here at the White House, President Trump signed into law the first major legislation to create regulations for a stable coin market. That's a type of cryptocurrency that's pegged to hard assets like the U.S. dollar. And President Trump, praising the legislative win, says it's going to boost U.S. dollar dominance. Watch.
With the privacy, flexibility, and decentralization of cash, this revolution has the potential to supercharge American economic growth and empower billions of people to save and transfer in U.S. dollars. It's really all backed by the dollars.
And meanwhile, critics of the legislation say that this new legal framework to offer more regulations for the crypto industry could give the government too much power to regulate this new industry, risking its deregulation aspect of it. Meanwhile, President Trump making clear that there will never be a central bank-issued digital currency. Back to you.
All right, Iris, thanks for those updates. On Capitol Hill, House lawmakers wrapping up a busy week with a trio of bipartisan bills, a rescissions package, and the largest of the 12 appropriations bills. Our Washington correspondent Luis Eduardo Martinez has the details.
House Republican leadership had a successful so-called crypto week and passed 3 bills: the Genius Act, the Clarity Act, and the Anti-CBDC Surveillance State Act. All 3 bills help create a clear framework to regulate digital currencies in the United States.
For far too long, America's digital assets industry has been stifled by ambiguous rules, confusing enforcement, and the Biden administration's anti-crypto crusade. But President Trump and this Congress are correcting course.
The Genius Act sets nationwide rules for digital assets tied to the U.S. dollar. The Clarity Act establishes clearly which digital assets are considered securities and which are considered commodities. And the Anti-CBDC Surveillance State Act bans the Federal Reserve from creating digital assets.
It was about learning together. And so when I look at the board and I see on Clarity 78 Democrats, and on Genius, coming over from the Senate, 102 Democrats supported Genius. This is about bicameral, bipartisan leadership for who? For the American people and for American innovation.
The House of Representatives also passed a $9 billion rescissions package, which now heads to the president's desk.
We clawed back $9 billion in taxpayer funds and wasteful spending. Fraud, waste, and abuse, we've been targeting that every area. This was directed to wasteful spending in the previous State Department, of course, Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and a couple of other areas. We looked at that. We thought it was a waste of taxpayer funds, and we're taking care of business.
The House of Representatives initially intended to pass a $9.4 billion rescissions package, but faced a July 18th deadline to pass the Senate's version or be forced to disburse the already appropriated funds.
Any cuts are better than no cuts. And the fact of the matter is, this is the low-hanging fruit. In a modern world with internet and streaming, we don't need to be funding PBS and NPR, let alone with debt financing. And we shouldn't be sending money all over the world to do silly things that don't benefit the American people.
The House of Representatives also passed their version of the Defense Appropriations Bill, a total of $832 billion, a bill that does not increase defense spending but does reprioritize a pay raise for enlisted personnel and refocuses funds for missile defense systems. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
Will President Trump ask Congress to rescind more spending? Which sectors could be targeted next over potential waste and abuse? Hear from Republican Congressman Buddy Carter of Georgia tonight on NTD's Capitol Report. Tune in at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The State Department today announced the release of 10 Americans it says were wrongfully detained in Venezuela. The release is part of a prisoner swap coordinated by U.S. officials and Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele, who sent home 252 Venezuelans detained in the El Salvador prison. Secretary of State Marco Rubio thanked Bukele and a team at the State Department for helping to secure an agreement for the Americans' release. Bukele said in a social media post, quote, "We have handed over all the Venezuelan nationals detained in our country, accused of being part of the criminal organization Tren de Aragua." He said that in addition to the Americans, Venezuela released a considerable number of Venezuelan political prisoners. Bukele added that all of the freed individuals are being transported to El Salvador before continuing their journeys home. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth meets with his Israeli counterpart over the situation in the Middle East. Meanwhile, the House Judiciary Committee releases a memo alleging that the Biden administration helped fund anti-Netanyahu protests in Israel. NTD's Jason Perry has the details.
A child walking in the Gaza Strip, familiar with the sound of incoming missiles, began running as soon as he heard the sound. On Friday, the Israeli Air Force reported striking hundreds of targets throughout the Gaza Strip in the past week, including terrorist squads, weapon storage facilities, explosive devices, and positions for launching anti-tank missiles. Israel also reported striking a commander in the Hamas terrorist group, Mohammed Hussein, who also participated in the October 7th massacre. Residents in the Gaza Strip continue to deal with the aftermath of the strikes and use whatever tools they have to try to recover bodies from the rubble.
We are still searching for the young man, Ahmed Abu Sahlul, his children and his wife, and we haven't found them. The civil defense crew came to the site, but they don't have the equipment or resources to pull out the dead children trapped under the rubble.
Many are wondering how long the fighting will continue, as talks for a possible 60-day ceasefire are ongoing. Israel has blamed Hamas for not reaching an agreement, while Hamas said on Friday that they hope for a permanent end to the war and for Israeli forces to leave the Gaza Strip. On the same day, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth met with Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz at the Pentagon.
We stand firmly with Israel, committed to reinforcing your right to self-defense. And whether it's new capabilities, that defense, or lasting peace, we look forward to working together.
It was a brave and historic decision by President Trump. Together, we destroyed the Iranian nuclear program.
In another development, the House Judiciary Committee released a memo on Thursday, which says the Biden administration misused taxpayer dollars to fund anti-Netanyahu organizations and terrorist-linked NGOs directly and indirectly. The memo says that millions of dollars were allegedly funneled through U.S. aid, the State Department, and other federal agencies to groups such as the Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors. And those funds were later used to pay for anti-Netanyahu and anti-democracy protests in Israel. The memo also says that the Biden-Harris administration provided $42,000 to an Israeli NGO to conduct, quote, civic activism training in Israeli high schools. The 6 NGOs mentioned in the memo have not yet responded to requests for comment. Jason Perry, NTD News.
The European Union and the UK are imposing further sanctions on Moscow. The EU calls it one of the strongest sets of sanctions against the Kremlin yet. Russia is now threatening to increase its attacks on Ukraine. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pozdar has the war update.
And this is about ratcheting up the pressure on Russia to reduce their ability to fund their war effort.
The finance minister of Great Britain announces that the UK and the European Union are set to impose further sanctions on Russia. This includes measures aimed at the Russian oil and energy industry. The EU's foreign policy chief calls it one of the bloc's strongest sanctions package against Russia to date. The European Union and the UK will set a moving price cap on Russian crude oil at 15% below its average market price.
A reduction from $60 per barrel to $47.60 a barrel.
But it's not clear how effective this will be. Russia has so far managed to sell most of its oil by circumventing previous sanctions.
We have already acquired a certain immunity from sanctions. We have adapted to life under sanctions.
The deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council took the response a step further, saying strikes against targets in so-called Ukraine, including Kiev, will be carried out with increasing force. And in other Ukraine-related news, President Volodymyr Zelensky says Kiev might close a drone mega deal with Washington. He told the New York Post that the US might buy battlefield-tested Ukrainian drones in exchange for Ukraine purchasing weapons from the US. Ukrainian drones have been able to strike targets as deep as 800 miles into Russian territory. Zelensky says those capabilities would be a significant asset for the US. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Coming up, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem highlights the arrests of 300,000 criminals and illegal immigrants, including those she calls the worst of the worst. Jason Blair has the details. And a federal judge today reconsiders his previous nationwide injunction on President Trump's birthright citizenship order. Arlene Richards reports after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The Trump administration highlights 300,000 arrests and deportations this year. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem showcased the, quote, worst of the worst cases in Tennessee while visiting Nashville. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
They're the worst of the worst. And America is safer because they're off of our streets, because of the work of the individuals behind me, but all of the agents and officials within HSI and ICE.
DHS Secretary Kristi Noem gives updates on her department's efforts to curb illegal immigration.
Since President Trump has taken office, we have arrested almost 300,000 and more criminals and illegal aliens here in the United States of America and brought them to justice and deported them out of our country.
Noem says that 70% of them have been convicted of criminal charges or have criminal charges pending.
Overwhelmingly, the families that live in this country are thrilled to have these people off of their streets.
Noem gave details on some of the individuals they have arrested.
In February, HSI Nashville arrested a 35-year-old Venezuelan charged with homicide after he stabbed his own wife to death. In January, HSI Nashville here arrested a 22-year-old Guatemalan who was an illegal alien here in this country. The charges against this individual count 3 charges of child rape, sexual exploitation of a minor, and identity theft.
Secretary Noem also said that her department is having issues with the mayor of Nashville.
Mayor Freddie O'Connell has gone after our ICE individuals and agents that work with HSI. He's openly doxed them, revealed their information to the public, encouraged people to work against them in their efforts to clean up the streets of Nashville, and he has forced his city officials, his employees of the city of Nashville, to document every single interaction that they have with federal immigration authorities.
Noem also explained a pile of items that were in front of her during the press conference.
When you look at the table in front of me, these are all drugs and guns that have been taken off of the streets from this office and this area, this state, that are no longer out there killing our children, that are no longer out there perpetuating drug addiction and splitting up families and conducting violence on the streets.
And on on Thursday, the White House commented on the possibility of reopening Alcatraz prison in San Francisco to house criminals again.
Just to follow up, Libby, on who the president wants to see housed in Alcatraz, the worst of the worst criminals in this country, both American criminals who convict heinous crimes, but also illegal alien criminals before deportation as well.
Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
A federal judge in Massachusetts today is weighing whether or not to alter his nationwide injunction on President Trump's limitations to birthright citizenship. The hearing comes after the Supreme Court recently ruled that nationwide injunctions likely exceed authority. NTD's Arlene Richards has more.
Plaintiffs, 19 states and the District of Columbia, as well as 2 nonprofit organizations, asked the federal judge on Friday to keep his sweeping nationwide injunction in place. In February, Massachusetts District Court Judge Leo Sorokin issued a nationwide block on President Trump's executive order that limits automatic birthright citizenship. Sorokin had said that the plaintiffs are likely to prevail on their claims at trial. But the Supreme Court recently ruled the injunction could be overturned if it is broader than necessary to provide complete relief to each plaintiff with standing to sue. The majority ruled that universal injunctions issued by several lower courts across the country likely exceed the powers given them by Congress. Plaintiffs' attorneys argued on Friday that the sweeping injunction issued by Sorokin was the correct ruling because it provides complete relief. They say the government didn't offer any alternative remedies that would completely redress their alleged harms. Therefore, the court's ruling was not broader than necessary. The government countered that the plaintiffs are missing the point of the Supreme Court's ruling, which is that a judge's ruling can only benefit the plaintiffs named in the lawsuit. They further argue that the plaintiffs have improperly suggested that the government should recommend alternatives, when it is their responsibility to explain why a universal injunction is necessary. The judge didn't make a ruling on Friday. He has taken the new arguments under advisement. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Coming up, Senator Ted Cruz explains to NTD why he's sponsoring legislation to fight against forced organ harvesting in China. Hear what he says about countering the CCP's influence in the U.S. when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. In unprecedented crime, the Chinese Communist Party has been extracting organs from prisoners of conscience to sell in hospitals, usually killing the victims. The biggest target is Falun Gong, a spiritual meditation practice heavily persecuted by the regime. NTD's Steve Lance spoke with Senator Ted Cruz about his bill to sanction this crime.
Senator Ted Cruz, thanks so much for taking a moment.
Good to be with you.
You've introduced the Falun Gong Protection Act to the Senate. This would be the first of its kind bill if passed. What type of message do you think it would send to the Chinese Communist Party if it does pass, and what does the bill actually do?
Well, listen, the Chinese Communist Party engages in murder, it engages in torture, it runs concentration camps, it persecutes dissidents. With the Falun Gong, they're a religious minority who are targeted, they are rounded up, and they're subject to horrific practices, including organ harvesting. They literally capture practitioners of Falun Gong, they remove their organs, and then they provide them either to transplant to other Chinese nationals, or they also find them the organs on the black market to be trafficked overseas. It is a grotesque and utterly inhumane practice. And this law very simply would impose sanctions on anyone engaged in organ harvesting of the Falun Gong. And it's a simple common sense proposition. My legislation passed the House by voice vote, without a single recorded objection. That's a very positive sign. We need to move it through the Senate. It hasn't moved yet, but I'm going to keep pressing it. And we need to speak with one clear voice against the evil that is perpetrated by the Chinese Communist Party.
Senator, to your point, the crime of forced live organ harvesting, it's not done by a rogue person. Yeah. This is state-run by the government. And your state of Texas has been at the forefront of legislation, particularly when it comes to these types of organ harvesting practices.
Listen, I have been for 13 years in the Senate leading the fight to stand up to the atrocities of the Chinese Communist government. And, you know, when I first arrived in the Senate, elected in 2012, I said at the time that China poses the single greatest geopolitical threat to the United States over the next century. And I think we need a comprehensive strategy, very much like Ronald Reagan had during the Cold War to take on the Soviet Union. We need the same sort of comprehensive strategy to take on communist China. Now, I got to tell you, in 2012, 2013, 2014, I was a very lonely voice up here. Virtually every Democrat disagreed with me. And most of the Republicans disagreed with me. They looked at China and they saw nothing but dollar signs as far as the eye could see. I do think a lot of people's eyes are opening up. And just like Ronald Reagan, you go back to the Cold War, there is power in clarity. You know, I was 10 when Reagan became president. I remember he came in and he referred to the Soviet Union as an evil empire. He said Marxism, Leninism will end up on the ash heap of history. He said, when asked, what's your strategy in the Cold War, he said, very simple, we win, they lose. And most notably, he stood before the Brandenburg Gate and he said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Ronald Reagan and America won the Cold War without firing a shot. We need that same clear resolve, and an important part of it is calling out their horrific atrocities and human rights abuses, and the fact that you have a government of a nation that purports to be a civilized nation, that is a permanent member of the Security Council of the United Nations, that is involved in every international organization. They ought to bow their heads in shame as long as they're carrying out practices like forced organ harvesting. So there is power in sunlight and truth for exposing their evil practices, and I'm going to keep fighting to do that as I have for 13 years.
Senator, talk to us about the transnational criminal element to the Chinese Communist Party when they expand their reach into the United States to manipulate our institutions, our media. What can be done to stop that?
So the Chinese Communist Party engages in propaganda. It engages in espionage. It has active spy networks in the United States, active spy networks against Chinese Americans, active spy networks against Taiwanese Americans, active spy networks against Americans writ large. You look at one of the very first pieces of legislation I ever passed into law was legislation dealing with Confucius Institutes. So Confucius Institutes are on college campuses in America. They are paid for and controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, and they are pits of both espionage and propaganda. And I drafted legislation that would cut off funding from the U.S. Department of Defense to a university that allowed a Confucius Institute to be operational on its campus. As a result of my legislation, which got bipartisan support, we have seen dozens of Confucius Institutes shut down. It is very much transnational. You look at something like intellectual property theft. Look, theft and IP theft has been around from the dawn of time. The first guy who invented the wheel, somebody probably stole the idea and made wheels for his buddies. But there's a difference. We have never before seen a nation state with trillions of dollars of resources and an economy behind it use the theft of intellectual property as a state policy. Listen, when it comes to communists, my father's from Cuba. My father was imprisoned and tortured in Cuba. My aunt, my Tia Sonia, was imprisoned and tortured by Fidel Castro's goons. So I have to tell you, when it comes to communists, I hate communists. It is personal. It is visceral. I believe communism is the most evil ideology mankind has ever produced, and the Chinese Communist Party is an evil organization. And I think we need American leadership to stand up and shine a light to stop their espionage, to stop their propaganda, to stop their theft of intellectual property, to stop their murder, their torture. There are over 1 million Uyghurs in concentration camps right now in China. And China should not be treated as a member of civilized society as long as they're engaging in vast and horrific oppression of its own people.
Senator Ted Cruz, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, Coca-Cola or Pepsi. Costco food courts are now switching back to Coca-Cola products. The rollout began this summer. David Lamb has more on the big box retailer's decision. And in the NFL, the Steelers agree to a record deal with one of the league's best players. Dave Martin joins us to explain when we come back. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The well-known $1.50 hot dog and soda combo is changing at Costco. Instead of Pepsi drinks, shoppers will get to choose Coca-Cola products now. NTD's David Lamb has more.
Coca-Cola is making a comeback. It's already replacing Pepsi products at Costco. In January, Costco's CEO said it would switch its food court fountain business back over to Coca-Cola. People said they've already noticed the changes across different locations in a gradual rollout. This location still had Pepsi as of Friday, but customers said they received soda cans instead of being able to use the fountain.
Coke or Pepsi?
It's Pepsi right now.
All right. Do you have a preference over either one?
Pepsi. It's a little bit lighter than Coke, a little bit less sweet. So, I mean, I'm going to give up my membership.
And others don't go for soda, such as this local who remained off camera.
I don't drink either. None of my family, I never buy Coca or Pepsi. I travel sometimes, my kid always wanted the Happy Meal. We choose milk or apple juice.
I don't prefer either. When I had soda in the distant past and college days, I would drink clear ones, Sprite and 7-Up. When my kids want a hot dog there, which is once in a while, we just don't get the sodas.
Costco used to sell Coca-Cola products, but switched to Pepsi in 2013 to maintain its $1.50 hot dog and soda combo.
Great for Costco, great for, everybody here that wants a dog. So hey, goes up to $2, I'm good.
I think the $1.50 hot dog, the $5 rotisserie chicken, I think they're fantastic, brand gimmicks to, this is always what it's going to be. I think it's great marketing in that case. So if that's what they have to do to keep it, I think that'll help them in the long run.
The complete Coca-Cola swap is expected to be completed by this fall. In San Jose, California, David Lamb, NTD News.
And President Trump this week announcing that Coca-Cola has agreed to use real cane sugar in its formula. While the company itself hasn't confirmed the change, are everyday Americans on board with it? NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall in D.C. to hear from the people.
According to President Trump, Coca-Cola has now agreed to put actual cane sugar back into their products instead of using corn syrup. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I agree with it 100%. I've never been a fan of high fructose corn syrup. I'm glad that they're bringing the real sugar back. I think it's a lot better for you. And just be honest, it just tastes better.
Don't think it'd matter. Trying to bring jobs back to America, that's all he's doing.
Cane sugar is a better option. Glass bottle, can't beat it.
I think that it's going to be more fattening, but better for you in the long run.
Might keep the kids a little extra animated at night, but other than that, anything that's natural is better than fruit juice or anything else like that, I think.
And do you like those Coke in the bottle or do you like them in a can?
I like it in a bottle. I like to see what I'm drinking.
I know that Coca-Cola in other countries is supposed to be better because they actually use cane sugar. So I guess we'll have to see. Oh no, it's interesting.
Have you ever had Mexican Coke?
That's what I was thinking of. I have not had it, but that's what I've heard that's like the stuff.
The HHS is now working to gradually phase out artificial food dyes from America's food supply. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I agree with it 100%. I mean, our food quality's junk. We got to increase. We got to fix it. Food without all the additives tastes better to me, and I mean it's better for you. Look at our obesity in this country. It's got to be the food.
Yeah, you need that yellow 5 and that blue 40 out of there, man. It's bad for the kids, bro.
Well, maybe if there's like stuff that you can't pronounce, perhaps it's not that good for you.
Yeah, that too. But that yellow 5 is bad.
I think we're just so used to it because we've all grown up with it. We don't know any different, but we don't really know what it's been doing to our bodies this entire time. So I think it's a good idea.
I know that some of the more natural food dyes used centuries ago were not the healthier option. I think I'd have to educate myself more on the natural dyes and some of these artificial ones before you could really judge it.
I think it's good. I need to do more research on the benefits or the negatives of like Red 40, stuff like that. But it's probably good to get rid of them. If other countries don't have it and we're just throwing it out there, maybe we should limit it.
I agree. I travel Europe quite a bit as well, and a lot of the food over there, they don't allow it at all. And to be honest with you, I think there is a difference. You can taste it and you can see it. So it's about time.
And Now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, plenty going on right now, but let's start in the NFL as the Pittsburgh Steelers have reportedly reached a record agreement to re-sign defensive end TJ Watt. How much is this deal worth?
Yeah, Tiff, it's $123 million for 3 years reportedly, so that's $41 million a season. That's the highest average annual salary for any non-quarterback player in the league. Now, of course, the best quarterbacks are always going to make the most money in the NFL, but he's now the highest paid beyond those players. And that mark has actually been reset several times this offseason already. You had Myles Garrett of Cleveland signing for $40 million a year back in March, and then Jamar Chase just went up to him just a couple weeks after that. So now Watt is number one. Now he's definitely worth it though. This is a four-time All-Pro player. His 73.5 sacks, the most over the last 5 years, and that ability to rush the quarterback without blitzing, obviously very valuable in today's game. Meanwhile, Tip, the Steelers really kind of overhauled their roster this year. I mean, he's not a new player, but they already have Aaron Rodgers. They've got DK Metcalf. They brought in Jalen Ramsey, so could be a fun team come next year.
Definitely big names. Well, moving to NBA news, injured All-Star Damian Lillard has reportedly agreed to a 3-year deal to return to Portland. Does this mean he'll play this season?
You know, that was my first question too. I don't think so. Now he tore this back. He tore his Achilles back in the first round of the playoffs. That was back in April. Usually it takes a year to come back from. This is a 3-year deal worth $42 million. So of course they at least get 2 years beyond that for $42 million. And that's actually still a bargain for an NBA All-Star these days. Now of course Portland was a team that originally drafted him back in 2012. Spent 11 years there. Still has his family and kids there, so that obviously was important to him too. I think it'll be very interesting to see what he is like when he returns. I mean, he just turned 35. Obviously, tearing an Achilles is a pretty big thing, and I've seen plenty of players not quite be the same that they were after the injury. And obviously, at 35, it is somewhat of an advanced age for the NBA, but I think at the very least he can kind of serve as like a mentor. Portland's got a bunch of young players this year, so you can see why why Portland and Lillard decided to do this.
Lots to watch for there. While looking at golf news, the Open Championship is now halfway through. What does the leaderboard look like after today's play?
Yeah, today, Scottie Scheffler, #1 ranked player in the world, rose to the top of the leaderboard, shot a 64. That was the best round of the day. He's now at 10 under par. But he's got a few players right behind him. 3 players are within 2 shots of the lead. Now, meanwhile, second-ranked Rory McIlroy is at 3 under, 7 shots behind Scheffler. And then you've got Xander Schauffele, the reigning champion here, at 2 under. He is tied for 17th there. Now, meanwhile, yesterday I mentioned how 55-year-old Phil Mickelson shot a 1 under on Thursday. He is now at even par after 2 days, so it looks like he will make the projected cut, which is at 1 over. And also, Bryson DeChambeau has had a really tough first day. Shot a 78, that put him 149th out of 156 players. But today, shot a 65, he's now at 1 over. Looks like he will make the cut as well. Of course, this is being played on the Atlantic coastline. Right now, as you can see, we were showing the weather there was pretty rough, rainy, windy. It was like highs in the 50s and 60s. You don't normally see this for golf conditions, of course, in the U.S., but over there, I guess that's pretty normal. They don't stop for the wind and rain. They just keep playing right through it, Tiff. I've never seen it. I'm not very good in good conditions, so I don't know how they do it in these conditions. Somehow they are.
I was going to ask if there's any fun stories about the terrain and how not fun it is to play on that, but you know.
I would imagine you hit it on the green and it just comes right back to you or something. I don't know. It's something like a scene out of Caddyshack is my guess.
Well, the audience seems to love it. Shifting gears to baseball, though, after a 4-day All-Star break, the season resumes today with all 30 teams in action. What games stand out to you?
Yeah, there's several. The big one I thought today, Cubs versus Red Sox. Red Sox come into the break on a 10-game winning streak. That is the longest in baseball. But the Cubs already halted that streak this afternoon with a 4-1 win. Seiya Suzuki with a difference with a 3-run home run there in the first inning. Both teams are still projected to be in the playoffs, which is still, of course, a couple months away. But now the Cubs have the tied for the best record in the National League with the Dodgers. Now, 2 other teams in line for a playoff spot play tonight, San Francisco versus Toronto. Now, the Giants will start 3-time Cy Young winner Justin Verlander. Verlander off to a slow start this year. He is 0-7 through 15 starts. And then meanwhile, also later tonight, the Dodgers host the Brewers. 2 more teams in the driver's seat for a playoff spot. Milwaukee comes in on a 7-game winning streak. So, Tiff, I know you're excited. The baseball season resumes again. We got several more months still of baseball. It's like the only major sport still going on right now. So, you can get used to this for a while.
Keeps you in business. Well, Davis Oz, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Tiff.
And that's all for today's news. For on-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.